welcome back to another episode here. Thanks for joining. Today, our topic is servant leadership. So, John, tell us, what is servant leadership? What do you think of when you think of that?
So servant leadership is my favorite style of leadership. You know, it's not typical. It's not something you see every day and everywhere. Robert Greenleaf, so he kind of structured most of it. And the servant leader is a servant first. It begins with a natural feeling that one wants to serve and to serve first. So I think, you know, as leaders of a company, you know, it's easy to be taskmasters and give someone something and tell them you want it done and don't care about how things get done. You just want to see it done. You know, I know for me, I feel like you're the same way too. You know, we care more about, you know, being part of the team, serving the team, and really setting people up for success.
Yeah.
So servant leadership is really built around 10 key principles. The first principle is listening. And really what that focuses on, you really just, when you're talking to someone, you really want to listen to them. You really want to dedicate, you know, your time to them. You don't want to be constantly interrupting them, like what this guy's doing right now.
I'm sorry,
you know, you want to give them your full attention.
Full attention.
Yeah, because you want them to feel valued. You want them to know you care. And that kind of pushes into the second piece, which is empathy.
Empathy. What's empathy?
Yeah, so empathy, you know, there's a lot to empathy. You know, but as for how it fits in here, you know, for me, I think it really, you know, drives into just getting to know your team, getting to know, you know, who you're working with, find out what makes them tick, learn their strengths, learn their weaknesses, and find ways to build on their weaknesses to, you know, hopefully turn them into strengths.
So healing, that's the third one.
Yes.
What's healing?
Well, healing, you know, I think that is really more geared to, you know, creating a healthy work environment. Okay. You know, we've talked about that a little bit in the past with the work-life balances, with some of the perks that, you know, we have. So I don't think we need to drive too much into that. But really, I think, you know, a healthy environment, you know, giving people the tools that they need and investing in them.
Self-awareness. That's the next one.
Well, I think self-awareness, too, sometimes can just be awareness. First step is looking at yourself, figuring out what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. But the other piece of that, just the awareness point, is really figuring out other people's strengths and other people's weaknesses. Because you want to be able to use yourself and others in areas that you're strong. Because if you're weak in something, if I'm not a good designer, I shouldn't be designing TeamGantt. You know, you're a good designer, you design TeamGantt. You know, so it's important to identify people's strengths and weaknesses and then use them in ways that benefit them, benefit the company.
That makes sense. All right, persuasion. So persuasion is part of servant leadership?
It is, yes. So persuasion, it's not sort of the dirty term that you think of sometimes when you think of persuasion.
You're trying to persuade me here.
Yes, exactly. So persuasion is more, you know, building a consensus amongst the team. You know, don't be a taskmaster that's ramming things down people's throat. You know, you're working to get buy-in amongst your team.
Yeah. I'm listening.
Yeah. So, am I persuading you? That's really what
you are.
I am. Okay, good. All right, we're making progress.
I think I'm healing in this process too.
All right, awesome.
All right, conceptualization.
Yes. So this is, I think, where TeamGantt really can come in and help you out, because it really, you know, it's about keeping the big picture in mind.
So you can't be a good servant leader without TeamGantt.
I mean, don't quote me on this, but yeah, totally. Because you got to have that big picture in mind. And without TeamGantt, there's absolutely no way you can do that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's important. Okay.
But no, so on a serious note, it's about keeping the big picture in mind, but also don't lose focus of the day-to-day.
Yeah. So you got to know, as a leader, you got to know where you're going.
Absolutely.
You got to know where you're going, where the company needs to go, where the project needs to go, and you got to have an idea of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so foresight.
Yes. So foresight, you know, learning from the past, you know, figuring out what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, and really taking the knowledge that you've learned from that and applying that to, you know, your future. You know, I think, you know, to plug TeamGantt again, we've got a fantastic feature.
TeamGantt, what is TeamGantt?
Yeah,
okay.
So TeamGantt is our product. So we've got this cool feature called baselines. So what baselines are is they're a way you can take a snapshot of your project at any point in time.
Right.
And, you know, you can compare that against the current schedule.
Yeah.
So, you know, by using this, you're able to really see, you know, what were areas we overlooked, what were areas we missed.
Yeah.
And then you can take that, and when you go into your next project plan,
you can plan more
you
accurately.
can account for it better. Yeah.
I think retrospectives, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's definitely
kind
a
of
piece
looking
of it, too.
back and just seeing what could we have done better on that project or that sprint, or and just figuring out what could have been done better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So stewardship.
Yeah, so I look at stewardship as, really leading by example. We're stewards of the company here, so we really want to set the tone. We want to lead by example. A very simple example of this, being the developer, would be deployments. Occasionally we have a deployment that we're gonna have to have some downtime. So we might need to do it at 2 a.m. or something crazy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure that I'm the first person to sign up for it, and then sort of after it, I'll wear the beeper, so to speak, so that if there are any issues, I'll take that hit, I'll take that blame. If other people want to join in the party, and maybe we're playing online chess or Battleship while things are deploying, then that makes it all more fun.
Right.
But yeah, it's about kind of taking the lead on that
Right.
kind
So
of
don't
stuff.
just ask other people to do things you wouldn't actually do yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Commitment to the growth of people.
Yeah, so I think that's the ninth point, and then the last point is building community. I think we hit those pretty hard in the other videos, but really about just invest in people and create an environment where people can really grow.
Yeah, that's good. And then you have a quote that you wanted to share.
I do. So John Quincy Adams, so he's the 6th president of the United States. He says, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader.
All right. Very good. Well, hopefully there was something there that was helpful. And again, that wraps up this episode. So we'll talk to you again another time.